finding our center. Why, when, with whom? So without giving it a whole lot of thought, raise your hands if you're feeling rather centered. And now raise your hand if you would feel awkward trying to describe what feeling centered even means. Yeah. Oh, wait. I'm here to say things about that, so I'll put my hands down. I find it incredibly useful to figure out how to describe something that one has actually experienced, than to start with a definition or expectation and then try to meet it. Together, we have invited centeredness into this space. Now, for some, centeredness has a physical feeling, maybe in the center of your body, between your heart and your belly button. Okay, imagine that space. If you need to, you can find it. That middle ground is called the solar plexus. It is a nerve center. We feel things there, right? I mean, I'm not a whole bunch sciencey, but we feel things because of nerves. I know that when I stub my toe or accidentally cut the bread in a way that is not useful, meaning me. When we feel anxious, that center place, that nerve center can feel maybe fluttery. That's how I experience anxiety, is a fluttery feeling. Conversely, when we feel calm, we might notice that our breath is located there. Oh, I've been breathing, and I didn't even know it. It's so calm. We're not gasping through the day with shallow breaths. And sometimes, I will boast, I can manage to get 3 whole breaths in, and then the anxiety jumps in. But I get three whole breaths, 3 seconds worth of calm, of centeredness, before my brain kicks in and has some things to tell me that are not useful, usually. Mostly it's, am I doing this right? I don't think I'm doing this right. It feels funny to breathe this way. I'm glad I'm the only one in the room with that. Thank you. So maybe that's the whole point of a centeredness practice, because it is hard to turn off what I like to call the inner critic. Actually, I call it the committee, because it's more than one opinion being voiced in there, and to just be present. I'm going to trust you to keep breathing, whether it is a centered breath or a nervous hiccup, as we answer some of these important first questions of why, when, and with whom. You'll notice I did not include what. I don't want to make you any more anxious than you might already be about doing this right. So why find our center? Well, there is plenty happening in the world around us that has the capacity to knock us out of our center. I've discovered that certain images and the sound of certain voices can bring me instantly to rage or despair. Oh, I'm not the only one in the room again. Thank you. But that is definitely not being centered, right? If just the sound of a voice can send me to the moon, that's really not centered. So having a practice that brings me back into myself, because when you're not centered, it can feel like an out-of-body experience. So it brings me back to myself. Having a practice that brings me back to myself is really useful. If you've ever experienced intense emotions of fear, anxiety, despair, rage, you've probably had an out-of-body experience, like I have. Because that's, personally, the only way I can describe it. Completely off kilter, completely out of center, out of my body. Now, I suppose I could entreat a power outside myself to fix me, to reestablish connection, but my experience in that regard has been variegated, and ultimately pulls me further out of myself. A centering practice keeps me present and accountable. Parker Palmer said, We all have an inner teacher whose guidance is more reliable than anything we can get from a doctrine, ideology, collective belief system, institution, or leader. I'm just going to read just the first most important chunk. We all have an inner teacher. End of sentence. All right, when to find our center? Well, whenever we need it, right? I find that having a variety of prompts is useful. I can't relax and close my eyes if I'm driving, or at least I shouldn't. I can, but I should not. But I can turn off the radio. I can relax my shoulders and sigh audibly. Okay, I see your shoulders around the room, so go ahead and just pull them down. You're welcome. Now, we're going to sigh audibly. So you take a breath in, and it's not a shriek, it's a sigh, okay? Here we go. Breathe in. All right, now put your shoulders up to your ears. Oh, you all breathed in. That was so cute. I didn't tell you to. Don't hold your breath. Okay. Now, we're going to take a breath in and lower the shoulders, and we're going to sigh out the breath. You now have a centering practice. And if you accidentally breathed from your center, bonus. I find it's useful to have multiple, and just breathe normally now, in case you're waiting for more instructions. Breathing is good. That's a good place to start. I thoroughly recommend breathing. And sometimes we need something a bit more active or creative, maybe walking in nature, journaling, some sort of creative arts, screaming into pillows. There's a lot of creativity in this room, and I'm sure you already have centering practices that you didn't even know were centering practices. And some days, frankly, require a full menu of centering practices. So remember that the when of a centering practice also has to fit your life. If you only have a few minutes, then a few breaths may be all you can spare. We so often set ourselves up for failure by creating elaborate roadmaps to serenity. And maybe we could help each other stop that. Now the question, finding our center, with whom? I think there's only one rule for this, and it is with people whom you trust. You can center yourself alone, with a friend, out in nature, at your desk, in a room that looks remarkably like this one. You can even find your center among those who are not particularly friendly. In fact, it's extra important to be able to respond from a place of centeredness. And the more you practice, the better you get at it. The less time it will take you to find and respond from your center. And so, among friends, relaxed and centered, we're going to sing our open heart meditation again. So now that we've answered a few questions about finding our center, I think it might be time for a warning to be discerning about just what we let in. Here I am. I whistle as I work. You know, I love to chat with people about their beliefs. I sure hope I run into some folks to talk to today. Why, look. Here's someone now. Good morning. What an interesting bag you have, and what just exactly are you doing?
I've been very busy. There are so many interesting things to catch, and I don't want to miss a single one.
What is it you're trying to catch? Butterflies? It's a little early for them.
They're not something you can see? I'm catching beliefs. There are so many interesting ones from religions all over the world, and I don't want to miss any of them. I want them all.
But doesn't that get confusing? I mean, with so many interesting beliefs, surely some of them contradict each other.
Well, that doesn't matter to me. I collect them all. I believe in everything. I'm so sorry. I really can't talk right now. I have so many beliefs I have to touch.
Well, that was a rather unusual conversation. That person has a very open mind. I would find it very confusing to try to hold on to all of those different beliefs in one bag. Oh, someone else with a bag. What a coincidence. I wonder what they're doing. Wow, hello. Are you having some troubles? You seem to be batting something away.
I've been trying to outrun these belief bugs all morning, pestering me. I have all my beliefs nicely secured in this bag. I don't need any more. I'm perfectly happy with the beliefs I've been carrying around for decades.
Wow, decades. How do you know there's not something out there that might be a better fit? Haven't you grown and changed in all those years? Shouldn't your beliefs grow and change too?
That's just crazy talk. Everyone knows you get a belief and you hang on to it the rest of your life. If beliefs can change, then how can they be real beliefs? What if I find something that I believe more than the ones I've been carrying around? That would be terrible!
Well, those two people couldn't be any more different from each other. One is willing to believe anything that comes along, and the other one is afraid to investigate other possibilities. I wonder if there's a happy medium.
Why, hello. What a nice surprise to see somebody else out walking on such a beautiful day. Oh, wait. I think that little beauty's going to go nicely with my collection.
What are you collecting?
I'm collecting beliefs, but I'm very particular. I only choose beliefs that are based in love and include acts of justice and compassion.
Beliefs based in love that include acts of justice and compassion? That reminds me of the mission of a church I know of. Is your bag very full?
You know, it's not as full as you think. Sometimes I pick up a belief just because it's got pretty petals or a sweet smell. But when I get it home, it just doesn't fit. You know, I have quite a compost pile of beliefs I almost kept. It's a challenge to decide. Occasionally I have to compost an old belief because I found another one that fits much more with the person that I'm becoming.
And you're not threatened by that? Having outgrown a belief?
No! I mean, I don't have the same taste in shoes that I did a decade ago. Why wouldn't my beliefs also change? I'm growing and changing all the time. I just try to find the balance between bringing in the new and letting go of beliefs that just don't fit anymore. It's a challenge, but I have a lot of support from my church, and I've learned to trust my deep knowing. As long as it's something based in love, compassion, and justice, I'm willing to try it. If it doesn't fit, I let it go. It's a system that works for me.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much for talking with me. I think I need to go home and blow the dust off my own beliefs bag and see if everything still fits. Bye. What an interesting morning I've had. I hope you have as well. Our budding theatrical group. I just made that up. Want to have one? Have you blown the dust off of your beliefs bag to see what still fits? Not only are you allowed to periodically check in with your current belief status, it is a spiritual responsibility to do so. We outgrow beliefs, or at least we should. Even the Apostle Paul realized that when he was a child, he thought and he spoke as a child, but when he became an adult, he put aside childish things. It's the last verse of 1 Corinthians 13. Look it up. Beliefs and practices should help us to live from our place of greatest authenticity, our center. And as we have noted earlier in the quote from Parker Palmer, we all have an inner teacher whose guidance is more reliable than anything we can get from a doctrine, ideology, collective belief system, institution, or leader. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that it is up to each of us to do the work of locating that inner teacher and listening to its guidance. As we learned from the children, we can have all of Jet Pig's qualities of justice, equity, and the rest. But if it's not centered, it's like a gong or a clanging cymbal. That's another 1 Corinthians 13 reference. The work is hard, and it is the most important thing that you will do in your lifetime. Maybe you're thinking, no, Michelle, all these other things are so, I need to leave a legacy, I need to do these things, I need to change the world. Yes, and you need to start inside, or you won't have anything to give. So, making that inner journey, dusting off the belief bag, and seeing where you are now, and then doing something about it, it really is. It's the starting place from which all of those other things that we do and beliefs that we have, where they all come from, where they're all rooted and nourished. Our centeredness is what gives us the capacity to do justice and compassion in a way that lifts up the worth and dignity of those we serve. Finding our center requires letting in. What you let in, the speed or lack thereof, all of it belongs to you. It is your work. It is your gift. If you try to put off your work, I think you'll find that it is persistent, knocking ceaselessly at the door of your deepest self until you respond. Are you annoyed with that yet? Imagine decades. Because that's how it was with me and my call to ministry. I first heard the call to ministry when I was 8 years old, but I was in a faith tradition that did not believe that women should speak or be ordained. So I spent the next 37 years doing ministry in other ways, helping others find their voices, helping myself find my voice through music and theater. But there was that persistent knocking that kept me unsettled and listening hard for direction. When I finally broke down and went to seminary, the knocking quieted. Oh, thank goodness. After I graduated and was ordained in 2012, I enjoyed 10 years of relative peace. And then I let in the tiniest flicker of light by continuing my education in spiritual direction with Jungian-informed dream work. Now here's the funny thing about light. If I thrust a candle into a room and command it not to show me anything over on that right side of the room, well, that's just ridiculous. The light shines on all of it. And this light happened to shine on the tiny little box in the tiny corner where I had stuffed the fullness of my experience of spiritual trauma. Spiritual trauma can make it difficult for us to let things in, especially if those things are connected to the trauma. Now, if the word trauma sounds too dramatic, maybe spiritual conditioning? Okay, so here's a tiny example. This is not a traumatic example, but a spiritual conditioning example. When I was a teenager, I brought home from the library a book on yoga. My folks about fainted. Didn't I know that yoga was the way to inadvertently allow demons into my body? So nearly 50 years later, I have never gone to a yoga class. Do I believe that demons will enter my body? I do not. And yet there is a barrier to my letting in a spiritual and physical practice that might benefit me. Trauma or conditioning is not rational. There is no logicking someone out of their conditioned response. So I tell you this story as the teeniest, tiniest example of what for me is an entire topography of spiritual trauma and the decades of work I've been doing to minimize my knee-jerk or allergic reaction. It is also why healing spiritual trauma is a vital part of my work as a spiritual director, a dream worker, and minister, because it's personal. So when I ask you to consider finding your center by letting in a spiritual idea or practice, I understand that it can be incredibly difficult. I'm still figuring out my own path across the spiritual trauma topography. I know that the Christianity that I encountered as a young adult was a toxic form. I know in my head and in my heart that there is a Christianity that we just haven't tried yet. But I'm not ready to let it in. I'm doing the work of shining the light and trying to unravel a really snarly mess. So why do I tell you this? I tell you this partly to remind you that it is okay if it does take decades to sort out your spiritual broom closet. I'm not a guru who has it all together. In the 1838 Harvard Divinity School address, transcendentalist and Unitarian minister Ralph Waldo Emerson noted, "The true preacher can be known by this, that he deals out to the people of his life passed through the fire of thought." We will forgive Waldo his use of masculine pronouns as he described true preachers. It would be a couple of decades before the women were fully ordained in Unitarian and Universalist settings. I bring up this quote because it is exactly in the spirit of dealing out a part of my life to you, life passed through the fire of thought. So hear this. Letting in is optional. You get to decide what to let in and when, or possibly if to let in, or to permanently close a door. You are the boss of your spiritual life. I do not believe that there is a cosmic parent watching from a distant throne just waiting for you to mess up. Nope, I do not believe that. And if that's part of your spiritual topography, we can work together on letting that broken story go. I urge you to undertake the task of finding your center by choosing the path of joy. You don't have to tackle all the hard stuff up front. In fact, the more centered you are, the more tools you will have to take on the hard stuff, maybe a little later. So it's in your best interest to start with joy. So where to start? Start with love. Center yourself in love, the great love that will never break faith with us. When you're ready, connect that love to actions and ways of being that include justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. You know, jet pig. Keep love at the center, and you will remain centered. Examine your beliefs, blow the dust off of them, decide what stays and what goes. Keep the love that holds and enfolds each of us. Now relax your shoulders, take a few breaths, because something happened here today. Our song in response.